So, welcome everyone back to the class on MMM. So, today we will proceed with the remaining part of your module 5 related to the temperature measurements. So, in yesterday's class, we dealt about related to the strain measurement methods, right? So, what is gauge factor? Then we also dealt about which are the instruments which are being used in order to measure the strain resistance as well as the Wheatstone bridge circuit we studied, and also we told that the strain what we measure is directly affected by the temperature, outside temperature. So how do we do the temperature compensation? So under that also we studied the two methods. So that completed our first portion of the fifth module related to strain measurements. So now we are left out with temperature measurements, what we have to start up from today. Right. So with this brief discussion, I'll just want to share the screen right away. And at the same time, you people type your name and USN number in the chat room. Please, if anyone have logged in through non-college ID, kindly log out and log in through college ID only. Even for uploading, one or two students had the problem that they had submitted the assignments in non-official email ID. So if you have done with that, kindly resubmit me with BMSIT email ID. So you will be having a proper channel of correspondence for your assignments and the grades which are being mapped. So it will be on a safer side. Just a second, I'm sharing the screen. Yeah, is it visible, Jayant?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So fine, let us start with our temperature measurements. So as we told in the last class, we dealt about the two methods, the Wheatstone bridge and the resistance bridge arrangement and temperature compensation, how we do with the two methods. One is the adjacent arm, another one is the self-temperature compensation. So all these we dealt about in the last class. So now we have to start up with the temperature measurement part. So you know, wherever any type of reaction or manufacturing, yeah, synthesis, always there'll be a change in temperature. And it is very essential to note down the variation, what you are getting when any chemical reaction is taking place, during annealing aspect or any other temperature healing method. So there is a need to measure the temperature, and hence temperature measurement is the most common and important measurement which has to be done based on which type of process you are following. It could be a synthesis process or it could be just improving the properties of the given material, where you go for annealing treatment and heat treatment from minimum to the maximum range depending upon the melting point of the material. So irrespective of any aspect, it is very essential to do the measurement of temperature which is currently going on in any process, and hence there is a need for temperature measurements. So you know what you mean by temperature. So basically you, if you need an inactual definition, so temperature may be defined as an indication of intensity of molecular kinetic energy within a system. So it could be any system, a metal, a semiconductor, dielectric material, whatever it is. So when it is subjected to the temperature, heating, so what happens? The material, some reaction comes into picture. It could be a solid state material, it could be a liquid state material. So if it is a solid state material, then solid state kinetic chemical reaction comes into picture. If it is a liquid material where you're subjecting annealing या heat treatment, then liquid state kinetic chemical reaction comes into picture. Then the kinetic chemical reaction equilibrium has to be achieved. Then you have to see which are the input materials you have given in the reaction, which is the output which has been required is been achieved in the chemical equation or not, which are the amount which has been released in the form of gases. So kinetic theory models, various kinetic theory models are there. So it helps you to indicate what is the intensity of molecular kinetic energy associated in a system when a chemical reaction takes place within the material when it is subjected to heat treatment. Okay, so in actual, if you need the definition for the temperature, it is nothing but the indication of intensity of the molecular kinetic energy associated within a system. So like, you know what you mean by mass, length, time, etc., right? Similarly, temperature is also an one fundamental property similar to that of other measuring properties, the physical properties, the mass, length, time, etc. But this temperature cannot be measured using the basic standards through direct comparison as we were doing it for other static and dynamic characteristics measurements. So here you can determine through some standardized calibrated device only. Suppose you have a muffle furnace, okay? So you will just keep within the ceramic this one container the material which has to be heated, because the material what you place inside, you should be knowing what is the melting point of it. So you will set the temperature of the muffle furnace below the melting point and you start providing the heat treatment. So that calibrated device, which is our muffle furnace, will help to show what is the temperature you have subjected for that particular material for heat treatment. Okay, so when that temperature is been reached, then you will analyze what is the intensity of molecular kinetic energy variation that has been taking place in the system. So that temperature will be recorded directly from the muffle furnace. So this is just simple example to understand how a temperature measurement is done. So it is done by using some standardized calibrated devices. Okay, so during temperature measurements, the various properties comes into picture, right? So what are it? Why the change in temperature causes increased intensity of kinetic energy associated with the system? So that is due to the various changes that comes into picture. So it is the change in the physical state, it could be the change in the chemical state that take place, or else it could be the change in the dimension of the physical dimension of a given body or a material. It could be a thin film, it could be a bulk material, it could be in a state of powder, or it could be in the form of pellets. So depending upon the device you are subjecting to the heat treatment, so similarly, you will get the change in physical dimensions or in physical state or in its chemical state. It depends upon the temperature you have subjected. And it can also result in change in electrical properties. Suppose if you do the heat treatment for a given body, it usually helps in improving the density of the given material. So when the densification has been done, the in the powdered state, then that powder you will use to make a device. So due to the densified powder what you have prepared, the device what you will be making will be free of voids and good density, and hence there will be obviously an increase in the functional properties. It is not only electrical, any functional property it helps in shooting up if you provide the heat treatment process in the form of annealing, and obviously you will get change in the electrical properties. Similarly, you will get change in the amount of heat radiated, the amount of change in the radiating ability. So all these are the changes, okay, which comes into picture when it is subjected for heating. So the change in physical and chemical states cannot be used for direct temperature measurements. So I told you change in physical state and change in chemical states. So these two cannot be used for direct temperature measurements. Okay, the chemical state, the chemical reaction, how when it changes, it depends upon the material what you are using, it depends upon the impurities which are into subjection, and it depends upon the inert atmosphere. or open air where the chemical reaction is taking place. So you cannot directly measure. You should analyze what is the reaction which has been taking place, what is the product you are getting, what is the amount of gas which has been released, and hence this could be not directly measured, and hence it cannot come into the category of direct temperature measurement. Okay. However, temperature standards are based on change in its physical state, not in chemical state. So when there is a change in physical dimension due to shift in the temperature, it forms the basis of operation for liquid in gas. Okay, and these are being measured by using bimetallic thermometers. So when there is a change in physical dimension due to a shift in the temperature, so the instrument what we use to measure is based on bimetallic thermometers. And similarly, for the other changes you have to consider. You have heard about the thermocouples and pyrometers and all. So what these devices are capable in measuring, so that you have to understand. So when obviously you are subjecting to an temperature, I told there will be change in the electrical properties. So there are various electrical properties which comes into picture. It is like conductance, resistance, okay, piezoelectric properties, coefficient of this one, piezoelectric discharge, so whatever it is. So there will be change in electrical properties, such as even related to its conductivity. I told electrical conductivity, thermoelectric effects. So when you have the change associated with electrical properties, which induces directly EMF, which is called the electromotive force, and this are the instruments which are able to measure these parameters. So thermocouple will be helpful in measuring the amount of EMF induced in a material due to the change in the electrical properties when it is subjected for temperature or the heat treatment process. So whenever you need to measure what is the electromotive force induced in a material due to change in the electrical properties, we will go for thermocouples. Similarly, you have heard about pyrometers. So what are these helpful for? So what happens is, another thing is the pyrometer is one of the temperature measuring method. So it is mainly used in order to measure the energy radiated from the hot bodies during the time of operations. Okay, so it is basically related to the infrared rays, the optical radiations which are emitted during when it is subjected to an heat treatment process. So these are the pyrometers which are being used in order to measure the energy radiated in any optical radiation devices which are being used. So you will be using bimetallic thermometers, okay, when there is a variation in the physical dimension due to change in the temperature. And second one is you will be using the thermocouples if you need to measure the electromotive force. And thirdly, you will be using the pyrometers if you need to measure the change in the energy radiated. So these are the three main properties which has to be measured by using these measuring devices under the section of temperature measurements. So now, after we are knowing about the classification of the instruments which are being used to measure the properties associated with the temperature, now we should know the temperature measurement, how it is done by electrical effects. Okay, so these electrical methods of temperature measurements are very convenient method which are being used. Why? Because they provide a signal that can be easily detected, that can be amplified, and that can be used for control purpose. Only if it is detected, it should be worth enough in amplifying so that the operator will get the output signal as per the requirement so that it could be measurable. For that, it is necessary that it has to be amplified, right? And or else whenever there is a need to control purpose, so even at that aspect the signals should be usable. for that purpose, the electrical effects or the electrical methods of temperature measurement are very convenient to be used, and most commonly electrical method of temperature measurements are used. Apart from that, there are quite accurate when properly calibrated and compensated. So every measuring instrument, either it is temperature measurement, a strain measurement, or any other measuring instruments used in metrology, has to be calibrated very frequently. Even in this case, if it is calibrated properly, regularly, periodically, you will be getting an quite accurate results. So this is one of the plus point along with the previous application what I told you. And next is several temperature sensitive electrical elements are available for measuring temperature. So it is not only a particular electrical element you will be using for measuring the temperature. So various sensitive electrical elements are available. So based on the application for which you need to measure, so based on that you can select the electrical elements, and also temperature associated electrical elements are available. So it depends upon what is the temperature until which you want to use for measurement. So based on that also you can select the available sensitive electrical elements. And next important characteristics is thermal EMF and both positive and negative variation in the resistance with the temperature are also very important. So what is the thermal electromotive force induced, the positive and the negative variations what you are getting in the resistance. So all these are also the important parameters of electrical method of temperature measurements. So this was about the electrical method of temperature measurements. So in it, first you have to understand what is thermoresistive elements. So we spoke about various electrical elements, right, which are available. So in that now we are speaking about the thermoresistive elements. I told you there are various sensitive electrical elements with respect to the temperature. In that we are now focusing on thermoresistive elements. So the electrical resistance of most materials varies with temperature, so that everyone knows. So depending upon the temperature, the electrical resistance of the material will keep on varying. So it could be linearly varied or non-linearly varied. It depends upon which type of resistive element you are using. So these resistance elements which are sensitive to temperature are usually made up of metals, and they are by default good conductors of electricity. So the elements through which it is made will be purely metal. So it is not like a semiconductor or a dielectric material. It will be a purely and conducting material which shows a good conductivity for the flow of electricity. And hence, when you speak about the thermoresistive elements, always you have to keep in mind it is made up of metals and they are good conductors which allow full flow for the electricity to pass through it. Examples we can just take about like nickel, copper, platinum, and silver. So any temperature measuring device which uses these elements is called as resistance thermometers or resistance temperature detectors. In short, we can call this as RTD. So if any devices which use the elements which is mentioned above, you call that as an RTD device or as resistance thermometers. So you should be knowing what are the elements used when we speak about the word resistance thermometer. If in case semiconducting materials are being used, okay, so in that case it will be purely a combination of metal oxides of cobalt, manganese, nickel. So this will be having a large amount of negative resistance for the coefficient values. And these are the devices which are mainly called as thermistors. So if in future we call by the name thermistors, so you have to first keep in mind that these are made by semiconducting materials. If it is told as thermometers, then these are the materials made by metals which are good conductors. So thermometers are conductive materials, and thermistors, what we use, are purely on semiconducting material. So you have to play with the combination of various metal oxides which are available. It is not only always it is cobalt, or manganese, or nickel. So based on the requirement, you can optimize the combination of various metal oxides which are available, and respectively the devices could be manufactured under the category of thermistors. Okay, so these are the two resistive elements what you have to understand. One is based on the conductor and the other one is based on semiconducting materials. Okay, so now you can just have a difference between the resistance thermometer and thermistor. So let us just focus. So now you know the difference mainly, which material is being used for thermometer as well as the thermistor. So if they ask you to list out the difference, so you can just categorize like in this that, I'm just speaking about the resistance thermometer right now. So in this, the resistance change with temperature shift will be very small. The change in the resistance which happens due to the shift in the temperature will be varied very in less amount, and it will be always positive. The change in the resistance value what you get with respect to change in the temperature will be small as well as positive. But whereas in case of thermistor, what happens in this, resistance change with the temperature shift will be relatively large because it is not a conducting material, right? It is a semiconducting material. Obviously, the resistivity for the flow will be less here and it will be high. So due to this variation, you will be having relatively large and it will be a negative value. So this is the difference between the resistance thermometer and the thermistor. So let us focus to the next point. So it provides nearly a linear temperature resistance relation. So the variation what you get in the resistance for the change in the temperature, here it is varied linearly. Whereas in case of thermistor, it is a non-linear variation what you get with respect to the increase in temperature, what the change in resistance you are recording. And next, in case of resistance thermometer, the operating range of temperature which is being used lies within the range of minus 250 degrees Celsius to 1000 degrees Celsius. But whereas in case of thermistors, the practical operating temperature will be for a very smaller range, which is in between minus 100 degrees Celsius to 275 degrees Celsius. Okay, so these are the major three difference. So let us focus on the last difference. So here it is about more time stable. So it has a stability with respect to time in case of resistance thermometer, but whereas in case of thermistor, it is not stable enough with respect to time. So this is the thing. So due to the stability, what happens is it will provide reproducibility with low hysteresis in nature. We have studied about this hysteresis graph previously in the module, right? So this helps in providing a better reproducibility because there is inconsistency in the value what you are getting due to time stability. And as a result, the amount of the hysteresis nature which is stored in the material will be low. But whereas in case of thermistor, it is not time stable, means the stability will not be there in case of thermistor. So this is the difference what you have to understand between resistance thermometer and our thermistor. Okay, so now, so we dealt about the differences. So let us focus a little bit in depth. So this is now again related to the properties associated with electrical resistance thermometers. So what are the desirable properties which are associated with resistance thermometer materials? So the first one is the material should permit fabrication in convenient sizes. So the material what you are selecting to build the electrical resistance thermometer should be providing convenience with respect to the size. It could be a very small, yeah, compatible dimensions, or if it is needed for in bulk also, it should be having the comfortability, convenientability for the size measurements. Second is its thermal coefficient of resistivity should be very high. Not only very high, it should be consistent. Okay, so that you will get an constant value of thermal coefficient of resistivity. If it keeps on varying, if it is not stable at all with respect to time, then even though if you have an high thermal coefficient of resistivity, it will be of not much use. So always you have to think what is the thermal coefficient of the resistivity would be for the material what you are selecting, whether the material what you're selecting is capable enough in showing the same consistent thermal coefficient of resistivity at the varying temperature also. If it is stable with respect to temperature and time, then it is very much preferable to select that material for electrical resistance thermometer. And the third property what you have to focus is they must be corrosion resistant. It should be corrosion resistant material. Okay, and it should not undergo phase changes. Obviously, you are selecting a material for temperature measurement. So when there is an increase in the temperature, when the temperature shoot out, they should not undergo any change in the phase diagram of that material, right? It should not go from alpha to beta phase. So it should be able to withstand in the same phase what it was in the room temperature. Because what happens when the phase changes, all the electrical properties associated with that material will change drastically. So it could increase or it could decrease. You have to identify the phase which is stable enough. So what is the stability of the material across the change of phase? Everything has to be considered. Along with that, the material what you select with respect to change in the temperature, it should not show any resistance. It should be corrosion resistant free material. So these are very much in need in order to select which material you go up with. So it is not necessary that the material you select will be having all these properties. A single material, sometimes it is difficult to do it. So you have to combine at that case more than one material together such that the required functional properties for devising the thermometer is being achieved. And all the properties which are achieved cannot be done at the physical state. Sometimes some reaction has to take place. For that, some annealing treatment has to be given, so that the list of properties which are needed for devising a product will be achieved. I'm telling this in general. So next is it has to provide reproducible and consistent result. That's what the material what you select should be very reliable so that it produce the same reading how many times you measure for the single specimen, and it should show an consistent result. There should not be any change with respect to the time and temperature. It should be able to show an consistent result. So these are the main properties which an material should possess if you are using that element as an electrical resistant element for devising thermometer. Okay, so but still, unfortunately, there is no universally acceptable material until now that this is the pakka material for devising thermometer. And the selection of the material mainly depends on various compromises. I told you obviously how we have to select the material. A single material will not be having all the set of properties. You have to play with the available materials, the combination of the metal and its oxides, and other properties, right? So that you get the required properties which are being needed. So to get these properties, you have to compromise sometimes. What do you mean by compromising? Suppose you have combined 2 to 3 materials, but still you are not achieving the required properties. Then you should try to add some dopants into it. So dopants are nothing but some impurities, what you are adding on so that you achieve those properties. So in embedding dopant is nothing but embedding impurity into the material to achieve some properties. So this is nothing but you're compromising in some way so that you get the end result. So that is the meaning of this sentence. Although the actual resistance temperature relation must be determined experimentally, right, for most of the metals, the following empirical equation which has been written here is been considered. So this is R suffix T. R suffix T is equal to R suffix O. Open the bracket. 1 plus A and B are constants here. T and T suffix 2. So what do you mean by these terminology? So here R suffix T will be the resistance at the temperature T. At a particular temperature T, what is the resistance value? Then R naught, R suffix O will be the resistance at the reference temperature. Usually while taking the temperature measurements, you will be having some reference temperature. So what was the actual temperature in room temperature? What was the measurement at the room temperature? Right, so that is a reference temperature. From there, when you shoot up the temperature, then the resistance changes. So what is the resistance at this particular temperature? So that you will be having an idea from which temperature it was in room temperature, and what was the resistance value at the room temperature and what was the resistance value at the temperature where you need to measure. So always you should be having one reference temperature to know the difference, how the resistance is being changing. You cannot blindly shoot up without knowing the reference temperature and the resistance value. And T will be the temperature, and A and B are the constants I told you. And these constants depend upon the material what you are selecting. So usually selected materials are platinum stands first. It is costlier, but still it is a very high, good conducting material, right? So preferably the first preference is given to the platinum, and then it is for nickel and copper. So these are still there are many more, but these three are most commonly used material. And the competitive materials for these are tungsten, silver, and iron also. But due to the corrosive resistance factor and all, platinum, nickel, and copper is preferred rather than going with tungsten, silver, and iron. But equally, both can be used in hand. With respect to be on safety precautions, always it is better to go up with these three materials, what I told you, platinum, nickel, and copper. Just a second. I'm just sharing a link for the other students. 2 minutes, I'm just coming back. Yeah. Okay, so we were dealing about the differences, and then we dealt about the material, what are its properties, and which is the equation which is being used in order to calculate the electrical resistance. Usually the electrical resistance value we do determine experimentally, but in some cases, if you know the material which has been used, and if you know the material constants which has to be used, and the temperature variations, the reference temperature and the temperature at which the resistance has to be measured, so then you can use this equation and calculate the values. Okay. So now this is just an, see, you can now see how to construct these electrical resistance thermometer. So the figure here will show the construction of an electrical resistance thermometer. Okay, so the first one is figure A. So the figure A shows the element of an, here the element consists of number of turns of resistance wires wrapped around an solid silver core. So here you will be having a solid silver core. So this is the material which is being used. So this will be a conductive material. So you will be having a silver core which will be winded by many number of turns of resistance wires. So you will be having the resistance wires which will be wounded around the silver core. So these are the resistance windings which will be done. So you can see n number of hole-like structures here. So this will be nothing but the resistance winding what you will be providing, okay, for the silver core. The silver core will be the conductive material. So you'll be having the resistance winding which helps in measurement of the change of resistance. So along with that, you will be having an insulative material. Always the given measuring device, the conducting material will be embedded with an insulator, or else you get short circuit, right? So once it has been connected to the insulator, here we are using ceramic as an insulator material because ceramics are dielectric materials. It is not neither a conducting material nor an semiconducting material. You can make that as a semiconducting material by adding some dopants. Until and unless you add dopants, ceramics are basically insulators. Okay, no conductivity will be passed through, and hence we are using here ceramic insulators. So the ceramic insulators later will be connected by the lead wires. Okay, so and then this will be connected to the circuit which is needed in order to get the readings of the thermometer. So this is how, and this will be entirely housed by an flange here. So this is the end of the flange and this will be the beginning of the flange. So this is a cut section, so which shows you how the silver core is placed at the center, how the resistant windings are rolled around the silver core. So the end of the silver core will be connected to a ceramic insulator. So once it has been insulated, once it has been packaged by using a proper flanging material, so this will be connected to the lead wires. So lead wires will be connected to the circuitry board for the measurement of the required data. So this is about the figure A, what I told you. So this element is made up of silver. So silver element core material is wounded by the turns of resistance wires. So here heat is transmitted quickly from the end flange through the core to the windings. So it will be transmitted very quickly from the end of the flange to the core and from core to the windings what you have. Okay. The next type of construction is shown over here. So what is this made up of? So the next form of construction is as shown in figure B. So here the resistance wires is wrapped around a mica strip. So you will be having a mica strip. So these are the mica strips. So these are the layers of mica which is being stacked together with the help of resistance winding. You can see the mica strip here, and it is being winded around by using resistance winding at frequent intervals of distance. Okay. So these resistance thermometers may be used directly. So this type of thermometer could be used directly to measure the change in the temperature as well as the resistance at that particular temperature. So you will be having a shell. So this will provide a packaging part in which the layers of mica will be embedded together, will be packed together, or it will be stacked together, and it will be wounded with the resistance winding. So when there is a change in the flow of current, so the resistivity will be changed. So when it is subjected to the temperature variation. So this, and along with this, you have a spring at the top and at the bottom, so that it helps in order to keep all the layers of the mica compressed and in a proper manner. So there will be no movement of the layers of mica here and there, and it will be bounded with resistance winding also. So when there is a change in the temperature, it shows obviously change in the variation of the resistance for the flow of current. So that variation in the resistance for the flow of current at that particular temperature will be then measured by using the thermometer. So these are the two constructions which are available for manufacturing or for packaging the device electrical resistance thermometer. So, but it has some so when the permanent installation with corrosion and mechanical protections is required, a well and socket may be used. I told you, if you need an corrosion-free thermometer and if you need a permanent installation for this thermometer, always it has to be packaged well. So it depends upon what is the packaging socket you are using. So based on the packaging material you are using, you can tell that you have safely installed this thermometer for lifelong and it is free from corrosion. So if it is just for temporary purpose, then no need of focusing much on packaging the device, right? But if it has to be used for a longer run in some applications, or in order to evaluate the results at high temperature where the human intervention is not possible, then you have to always be careful in selecting a proper packaging device so that it can be permanently installed and it will be corrosion free with the change in temperature, and you can easily get the variation in the resistance at all the temperature range what you have set for. So it depends upon mainly the application, whether it is required occasionally, rarely, periodically, or continuously. So based on that, you can think about how the thermometer is being devised, yeah, packaged. So which material you use for shelling part of it. Okay, so that you have to consider. So now you know about the electrical resistance thermometer. What are the properties you have to think about while devising the resistance thermometer, how it is being measured, right? And then which are the two methods in ease for construction of the thermometer. One is with the silver core, another one is the mica layers. Okay, so these two methods are easily available for devising the resistance. Then you should understand what are the instruments for resistance thermometer measurements which are being used, right? So here, this focus on the instruments for resistance thermometers. So some type of bridge circuits is normally used to measure the resistance change in thermometer. You know Wheatstone bridge, you know resistance bridge circuit, and simple circuitry system, how it comes into picture, and a Ballard circuit. So Ballard circuit and simple circuitry bridge you studied in case of our transducer chapter. And in strain measurement, you know about the Wheatstone bridge circuit and you know about the resistance circuit, right? So any simple type of bridge circuit can be normally used in order to measure the resistance value with the variation in temperature for resistance thermometers. So we now have studied how to devise a resistance thermometer. But this resistance thermometer has to be connected to some circuitry system, right, to evaluate the output. So that's what now we are focusing about the circuit which is being used. So in order to connect the thermometers to the circuit, you need the lead wires. We have studied what you mean by lead wire, 1 wire, 2 wire method, and 3 wire method, all those things, right? So these are nothing but the lead wires. If in case of Wheatstone bridge also, during strain gauge, we have studied if you have 4 resistors in the Wheatstone bridge, R3 and R4 will be kept and R1 and R2 will be removed, and that will be replaced by the strain gauges. So out of that, one will be the gauge material which has to be measured and other one will be the unstrained material. But how you connect these strain gauges to the Wheatstone bridge? We do connect with the help of lead wires only. Similarly here, the thermometers which has the resistance thermometers will be connected to the bridge circuit with the help of lead wires. And again, what is the length of the lead wires you have to think on. If you abruptly use the length of the lead wires without proper calculation, then you might not end up with accurate results of the output. Even the length of the lead wire, what you select should be very much appropriate. And hence it has been told the leads of the appropriate length are normally required, and any resistance change in them due to any cause of the effect with respect to variation in the temperature can be measured. If we are not using appropriate length, then you cannot know exactly what is the change in the resistance for automatic change in the temperature variation. The temperature can increase, the temperature can decrease. With respect to the increase or decrease in the temperature, even the resistance value either increases or decreases, and or else it can show an fluctuation, varying value if you haven't selected an appropriate length. If you have calculated theoretically what is the appropriate length, and if you have optimized the length of the lead wire, you cannot directly select a length. You can achieve this only by doing trial and error. So suppose you can just refer the papers for the appropriate length, and you can also manipulate some of the length for the lead wire. Sometimes you will have a connection for a longer lead wire. You will check the reading what you're getting, the resistance value variation with respect to temperature for a Wheatstone bridge circuit itself. Suppose if you take an example. Second time, you can reduce the length of the lead wire and see how good you are getting the result. And third time, you can still more reduce and get the reading. So by getting the readings for different lengths, then you will come to know what are the variations you are getting and where the accurate value of the value you are getting. So that is called nothing but optimization of the length. So once you have optimized what is the length of the lead wire, then you can select that specific length as an appropriate length to measure the actual variation of the resistance with respect to variation of temperature at any cost, either it is increasing or decreasing. And hence the lead resistance must be as low as possible relative to the element resistance. If the resistance of the lead wire is more than that of the resistance of the element what you are selecting, then it's of no use, because it will not allow the flow of electricity to pass through it only. Then you won't get the actual variation in the resistance what you have to measure in the resistance element. So always the resistivity for the resistivity measurement in the lead wire will be always 0, or it will be of negligible value. You cannot select a material for the lead wire which has high resistivity. If you are using that way, it is of no use for checking the results of the resistance material. And as a result, you should see that the resistivity of the lead wire, what you are using to connect the thermometers to the bridge, should be negligible or 0. So these are the concept what you have to keep in mind. So related to that, 3 methods of compensating lead resistance errors are shown in the figure. In the last class, we dealt about temperature compensation. Why? Because the strain varies with respect to the change in temperature. So in order to overcome these variations, we studied the temperature compensation methods. One is the arm method, another one is the self-compensation method. Similarly, even though you select the lead wire of least resistance, there will be some resistivity factor in the lead wire. So you have to understand which are the methods followed in order to compensate the lead resistance error. Error comes into picture because you are not connecting the thermometer directly to the bridge. You are connecting the thermometer to the bridge with the help of lead wire. So lead wire will be having some resistance. So due to this resistivity, you will be not knowing the exact resistivity, exact resistance of the thermometer measurement in the bridge circuit, because this will show some error due to the resistivity factor. So this error has to be overcome, which is associated with lead wire. So to overcome this error, we have to use some compensation techniques. So there are three methods of compensation techniques. Right? So if the lead have identical properties and are at identical ambient conditions, then the effect introduced by one arm will be cancelled by the other arm. So what is the first method? You are using the lead wires. So if the lead wires are prepared by using same material, so it will be having similar properties, and due to that it will be having similar identical similar ambient conditions. Ambient conditions are with respect to the temperature variations. So if that is the case, what happens if you have two lead wires connectivity? If both the lead wires what you are using are made up of same material, then it will be having same physical properties. So when it is subjected to the temperature, it shows same variation in the ambient condition. Due to this, both get cancelled and it gets nullified, and the error associated with the lead wire flow of current will be cancelled in there only. And as a result, the error associated with the lead wire will be cancelled. Then the reading of the thermometer could be directly measured in the bridge without considering the error aspect of it, because the error which was there in the lead wire will be cancelled. Okay, so this is an example. Methods of compensating lead resistance error. So this will be the Wheatstone bridge, which will be connected to an energy source battery. So you'll be having two resistors, and other two ends here are being connected to the resistance element with the help of the lead wire. So here the lead wire should be made up of same material. If that is the case, the resistivity, the change in the ambient condition will nullify among these three. So the error associated in passing the resistance from the thermometer to the bridge will be nullified, and hence it will be compensated. Here you are using uniform length of the lead wires. And here you can see you have two uniform lengths, and the third one is just a lead wire connected. Right? So these are different methods, and this is a third method where you have an extra lead wire. So you have three lead wires. One is connected to the last resistance R, this one R4. So suppose if this is R1, R2, R3 and R4. So that is being connected to an thermometer here, resistance element. So here the resistance element is connected with the help of three lead wires. So one is the extra. So this is how different methods come. So this method is called as Siemens three lead arrangements. So where this is a normal regular method which is being followed. So where you'll be having three lead wires of uniform length. So this is called as Calendar's four lead arrangement. So you'll be having 1, 2, 3 and 4. Here two lead wires will be of same length, and other two lead wires will be of smaller length in comparison to the first two. But these two will be uniformly of same length, and these two will be uniformly in the same length. So here one half of the bridge is connected, and the other half of the bridge is just connected to a lead wire to compensate the variation what you are getting with respect to the temperature variable. So here this is called as floating potential arrangement. So in this you will be having three lead wires. Wow, these two is directly connected to the resistance thermometer element, and the third one is connected here in order to overcome the variations. So fourth one, it is freely connected outside in order to release the excess amount of ambient condition variations. Okay, so now we will study one by one. So I just showed you the explanation how these three methods of lead resistance error could be overcome, as we did the temperature compensation in case of our strain gauges. So out of these, I told you the first one is the most commonly used. The Siemens three-lead arrangement is the simplest corrective circuit. At balance condition, the center lead carries no current. So when the given circuit is been balanced, the center lead what you have will not carry any current through it. Okay. So the center part will not carry any flow of current, and the effect of resistance of the other two ends is cancelled out. Why it is cancelled out? The effect of the resistance in other two lead wires get nullified because both the wires will be made up of same material. So when there is a flow of current in the same ambient condition of the temperature, these two gets cancelled due to same magnitude. Okay, so this is how the error associated with these two lead wires will be nullified, and this one will not carry any flow of current through it, and as a result the change in the resistance element due to increase in the temperature could be directly measured by using the Wheatstone bridge by nullifying the error which comes across these lead wires. So this is the most simplest and the common way for correcting the circuit associated with the lead resistance error. So what happens at the balance conditions, the center lead carries no current, I told you, and as a result, the effect of the resistance of the other two lead is cancelled out. This is also done. The calendar's four lead arrangement solves the problem by inserting two additional lead wires. So you know that this is the second one is called as the calendar's four lead. The calendar's four lead arrangement has two wires in extra. So what does these two wires do? It solves the problem by inserting two additional lead wires. So what does it do? So it is an adjustable leg of the bridge so that the effect of the lead wires on the resistance thermometer is cancelled out. So if you have any excess of variation in the resistance, which will help you in unbalancing the bridge, so that will be transfers to these two shortened lead wires, and these lead wire will help in compensating or cancelling those extra amount of change in the resistance, and as a result the bridge will be kept in balanced condition. So this is called as calendar's four lead arrangement. So next one is the floating potential arrangement. So what happens in case of floating potential? So floating potential arrangement is similar to that of Siemens connection. What is extra here? But it has an extra lead. So you can just have a look. So this is exactly similar to our Siemens. Only thing, you have one extra lead wire over here. Why this extra lead wire is being used? This extra lead may be used to check the equality of the lead resistance. So suppose you have the lead resistance passing through this. Okay, so one is so this will be 0, which will not offer the electric current to pass through. So here you will be having the change in resistivity with respect to the ambient condition. Both will be equal and it gets nullified, which is similar to that of our Siemens three lead arrangement. So only thing, you have an extra lead wire. Why it is being used? This extra lead may be used to check the equality of the lead resistance. So you'll be using this lead wire in order to check whether there is equality among the magnitude of the resistance between these two lead wires. If it is not, then you will come to know there is some variations. So that could be rectified. At the same time, the lead wire could be removed and the other lead wires could be added on. This comes into picture if you are using the same bridge with the same lead wire consistently for a longer term for high measurement of the resistance at high temperature range. If you are using periodically, occasionally, then floating potential arrangement is not needed. If it is used consistently at very high temperature, you cannot believe always that the two lead wires what you are using are ideal and identical for all the ambient conditions. Sometime or the other it gets failed. So when it fails, suddenly you should identify the variation is coming across. At that time, a fourth lead wire will be essential, which will be detected and sensed. And as a result, in that cases, you can use the floating potential arrangement. Okay, so related to these, there are various effects what we have to study that we'll do it in the next class. So it is Seebeck effect, Peltier effect, Thomson effect. Okay, so these are the effects which comes into picture while measuring the resistance in a thermometer. After thermometer, we have in our syllabus related to the thermocouple. So related to the effects of thermometer and thermocouple, we will study in our next class. So currently, I am just winding up at this time. If you have any doubts, you're free to ask. Hello. I hope everyone have written your name and USN number in the chat room. If anyone have not written, kindly please add on. Everyone have added on?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah, Tarun. Then any doubts you can ask, or else I'll just leave the class. It's
No,
done?
no doubt.
Okay, okay then. Thank you. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, bye-bye.